Hello everyone, it's time for Good Week Israel, where we'll be giving you ILTV's latest positive highlights. So get ready to smile, because coming up, a record number of Arabs are apparently trying to enlist in the IDF. We will learn the secret to living a purposeful life. And finally, stay tuned, because it's the moment we've all been waiting for, apparent proof of intelligent life among the stars. Israel and Greece are set to sign a $1.68 billion security agreement that includes Israeli-made fighter aircrafts and the establishment of a local flight school. It'll be run and maintained by Israeli defense firm Elbit Systems, and additionally, the deal will include aircraft maintenance as well as simulators for training and logistics support. According to Israel's defense ministry statement, the deal is set to span 2 decades, and Defense Minister Benny Gantz says that the agreement reflects the excellent and developing relations with Greece. He said the, quote, long-term partnership will serve the interests of both Israel and Greece, create hundreds of jobs in both countries, and promote stability in the Mediterranean. According to military sources, a record number of Arabs are apparently trying to enlist in the IDF. In fact, over the past year alone, over 1,000 Israeli Arabs have volunteered to serve in the IDF as either conscripts or reservists, the majority of whom signed up after the COVID crisis took off last March. This is more than double the number of volunteers from previous years. Roughly 500 new Arab soldiers are even signing up to be IDF scouts, fighters, and border police. But interestingly enough, according to the report of the 4,000 volunteers who did express interest in joining the IDF this year, about 700 came from Israel's enemy countries like Lebanon and Syria. That said, applications from these countries unfortunately had to be declined due to security considerations. Next, let's take a look at ILTV interview about a special Israeli program that trains Southeast Asian students modern farming.
The Arava International Center for Agricultural Training trains over 1,200 students from Southeast Asia and Africa every year, in cooperation with Tel Aviv University. Established in the central Arava town of Sapir, through the support of the Jewish National Fund USA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Agriculture, students gain an invaluable education in sustainable agricultural technologies and agronomics, which includes learning about Israeli innovation in one of the most challenging regions of the country. The fellows will work in close partnership with their mentors and be awarded funding based on mutually agreeable benchmark goals. Alumni have continued to share Israeli technology and innovations in order to create agronomic opportunities in their home countries, bringing sustainable agricultural practices, water management, aquaculture, and cutting-edge technological training that they learned in Israel. The program's goal is to turn Israeli innovation into a sustainable growth model that will impact the fellows' local community and continue to utilize Israeli technology and innovation to maximize Israel's global impact.
And joining me now with more details is Hani Arnon, Executive Director of the Arava International Center for Agricultural Training. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to talk about the ACAT program and share more details.
It's our pleasure to have you. So how long have you been running this program, and what organizations are involved in the Institute?
Okay. We established ACAT in 1994 with the support of the Israeli government, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Agriculture, and we have other partners in the origin countries of the students, the embassies, the Israeli embassy, and also the universities and official ministry. And in Israel, we also have, as I said, the Israeli authorities, and we have friends that believe in our project and support, friends like the JNF USA and JNF in other countries.
So speaking of the students in this program, where are most of them from? Are any of them from countries that don't necessarily have diplomatic ties with Israel?
Actually, we have a multitude of nationalities and cultures and religions, and they are coming, all of them, from developing countries. That the main source of livelihood is agriculture. And they come from, I give you some examples because it's exciting. They come from mainly from Asia and Africa, countries like Vietnam, Nepal, Cambodia, East Timor, Fiji, Vanuatu, Indonesia. As you know, Indonesia is a Muslim country that Israel doesn't have diplomatic ties. it doesn't matter. But these people, they choose agriculture and they choose to study this in Israel because Israel have a good name about innovation in agriculture, about high technologies. And although they hear in the media, they hear different things about Israel, they choose to come here and stay with us for a year to study in a program that is based on learning by doing. It's theoretical classes, but also practical. They get the know-how in the farms, and they are part of the community. Actually, they become a family of the people who lives in the Arava.
It's obviously been a very strange year for all of us. I'm wondering, how has the pandemic affected your program?
Yeah, actually, it's very strange. They completed the program in June, but they couldn't go back. So they stuck, but they are very happy for that. And they learn that it doesn't matter if it's a crisis or if it's a peaceful time. Every time and every country need food. People need to eat. So to work in agriculture, it's necessary. And especially if it's a local product, then you take care for the food security. I think the pandemic all over the world teach us that agriculture is necessary. And our students understand that they choose a topic or they choose an occupation that maybe at the beginning it looks like it's dirty job, work with hands, but they understand the meaning and the importance of the agriculture.
Sounds like a really, really special program. Thank you so much for giving us some insight into this on our show today.
Okay, thank you.
Now, are you eligible for an EU citizenship? Well, in this next ILTV interview, you can find out if you are and how to get it. Check it out. We've talked about how Jewish Portuguese descendants are eligible for Portuguese citizenship and thus EU visas. But recent changes in Portuguese marriage law is now complicating the issue. So here to break down the news, I'm joined by Jordan Levy-Bograd, the manager of the European Immigration Department with the Cohen, Decker, Pex & Brosh law firm. Jordan, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, okay, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about what changed in the law?
Actually, this change is a good change. Before, non-Sephardic spouses who wanted to get citizenship without living in Portugal for 18 months would have to be married for at least 3 years to the Sephardic spouse and have joint children. However, the change in the law actually is that spouses can be married for 6 years, regardless of children, and the non-Sephardic spouse can gain citizenship without living in Portugal for 18 months, as it stands right now.
Okay, so how is this affecting the process of Jewish Portuguese descendants applying for citizenship?
Well, there is an imminent change in the law that is going to happen, but the thing is that we still don't know when. The government hasn't given a sign. There's been a lot of rumors. A lot of people think it's going to be February, March. It could be 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. We really don't know. We have a legal team in Portugal. We're constantly in contact with them for updates, but there's nothing concrete at the moment.
All right, well, so in the meantime, to the best of your knowledge, who is still eligible? Is it non-Jews and Jews, or maybe just Jews?
Well, anyone that can prove that they're related to a Sephardic Jew, the chances are ideal and best with people who are Jewish today or children of Jewish fathers. People who have connections to countries like Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, and then northern African countries like Egypt and Syria, Libya, Lebanon, Tunisia, Algeria. Those countries are very, very clearly Sephardic, and people who have connections to those are almost assuredly Sephardic Jews.
All right, so obviously, known religion aside, I think one of the best ways to trace your lineage is through a last name. So what are some of the family names, or the more common family names that you've come across that are descendant of Portuguese?
Well, it's great that we're talking about this because I've had clients who have incredibly Sephardic last names and they didn't realize it, and they call and ask if they're eligible, and they for sure are. Names like Abutbul, for instance, or Buzaglu, or Shetrit, Abarbanel, Ederi, Halevi, Hakohen. There's a lot. If it sounds somewhat Spanish or Italian or Portuguese, most likely it's a Sephardic surname.
Well, and it's funny that you said, because some of these names, even to a Hebrew speaker like myself, like Cohen, like that sounds very Jewish to me.
Right, of course. Usually Levi, Cohen, I'm Levi, for instance. That can be anything. That can be Ashkenazi,
Sure,
that can be Sephardi, but usually, typically, HaLevi, HaKohen is very indicative of Sephardic.
All right, so how do you start the process, and how long does that process usually take?
So we start the process by gathering documents, connecting them to the Sephardic ancestor, the country of their origin, and then usually it's very quick to get the recommendation, but in terms of once we file all the official documents to the Portuguese government, it's taking more like 24 to 29 months now because of all the backups with Corona and bureaucracy there.
All right, well, I'm sure that there are a lot of people at home watching this who have many more questions to ask you. So luckily for you guys, if you have anything else that you'd like to ask Jordan, she's doing a live Q&A on our ILTV Facebook page at 9 p.m. Israel time tonight. Make sure to tune in. Jordan, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Now, one of the major changes hurting new parents over the past year was major cuts to Israeli maternity benefits, and this due to the massive rise in unemployment. But that said, the Israeli Finance Ministry and National Insurance Institute now have some very good news. You see, normally new mothers in Israel are entitled to up to 15 weeks of paid maternity leave, with the NII paying out their regular salaries. But this entitlement goes out the window if the mother hasn't worked during the 10 months prior to delivery. And with the COVID-caused unemployment crisis, the number of women in such a predicament has unfortunately risen dramatically. So to close the gaps in the safety net, the Finance Ministry has finally announced its solution. As of now, all mothers who give birth between January 1st and June 30th of 2021 will still be eligible for maternity leave benefits, even if they've been unemployed or on unpaid leave for extended periods of time. Now, the Torah institutes times of rest and reflection for us every 7 days, every 7 years. But what are we supposed to do with that time? Rabbi Farhi explores the message of taking a break and how it can lead to a more productive life. Take a look.
There is a secret to living a purposeful life, and its name is Shabbat. Our Parsha begins with a very interesting mitzvah or commandment. It tells us that when someone is living in the land of Israel, their field can be planted for 7 years, and when the 7th year comes, that year is the year of Shemitah, a year of rest. And the words of the Torah, V'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat la'Hashem, and the land will rest, a rest for God, seem to be telling us more than meets the eye. I would like to share with you what I think is a great secret. The idea of Shabbat, the 7-day cycle that ends 6 days of work and 1 day of rest, or in the years, 6 years of working a field and 1 year of rest, or even 7 cycles of Shemitah and then rest at the end in Yovel, they carry within them a grain of truth that I think permeates everybody's existence. We are told when a relationship goes sour by friends and family, get back on the horse. Get back out there. Find someone else. You lose your job. The first thing people tell you is, get back out there. The job search is on. Put out your resume. Find a new job somewhere else. But I think that what we're learning from the Torah here is something slightly different. After a natural cycle is completed, in Judaism, each number is given a meaning, and 7's meaning in the Torah is a natural cycle. When a cycle comes to a close, don't move on. Pause. Wait. Refocus. Recalibrate. Understand what it was that worked for you up until now and what it was that didn't. Don't necessarily find another job in the same career. Don't necessarily go out with the same type of person. Maybe the problem actually was that I don't really know what I want or that makes me happy. The idea of Shabbat is creating space where we think what it is, which is the primary purpose of what we do, and what it is that is the secondary purpose. So many people get lost in the cycle of work or in the cycle of dating that the work itself becomes primary and the goal of their work, which is something else, becomes secondary. I was once interviewed by the BBC for a program that was called Jews. And they asked me a question. You know, Jewish people, they work hard. They do jobs that make them a lot of money. Would you say that that makes them materialistic? kind of a leading question, don't you think, from the Beeb? However, I asked them one question in return, and I said, do you have any idea what it costs to go to Jewish schools, or to eat kosher, or to take off Shabbat and holidays? These things are expensive. So what your work or money is for is dependent on the mindset that you have when you engage with it. If your days of work are there so that you can provide your children with education, with opportunities maybe that you didn't even have as a child, if you could eat kosher in your house because that's something that is important to you, or keep Shabbat, or celebrate it in a beautiful way and invite guests, even though that might cost money, then the nature of your work itself becomes spiritual. Vishavta haaretz Shabbat la Hashem, the land rests, a rest for God. It allows us to think about a divine purpose in our life and to make the work for us and not the other way around. Similarly, I've noticed in dating and relationships as well, people are so busy trying to find the other that they lose themselves in that search. And they sacrifice the personalities that lie underneath in order to allow themselves to be maybe more palatable to a wider range of people. What a tragedy that is, when the entire purpose of relationship is to find someone that connects with you, the real you. There's an interesting line later on that we read when we talk about the various things that will happen to the Jewish people when things aren't going the right way and they aren't doing the right thing and they need to recalibrate. It says, Az tirtzeh haaretz et shabtoteha. Then, when the Jewish people are driven out of the land of Israel, they go into exile and the land lies barren, the earth will demand its Shabbatot back. I think in life we are given a choice to think, to focus, to decide which direction we're going in, or in the aftermath of losing ourselves to our job, to our relationships, even to our friendships. When everything crumbles, we get forced into that place. Az tirtzeh haaretz et shabtoteha. What a beautiful thing it would be to spend a minute or two in silence thinking at the end of the week what your week was like and how you're going to live next week in a higher or better way. At the end of a relationship, to analyze what it was that went wrong, what you did maybe that kind of caused it that way, and or in other scenarios, what the other person did, and to make sure that you avoid that kind of person doesn't kind of come into your life and into your heart next time round. We were given the gift of intelligence and thought, and sometimes we allow our hearts and emotions to ride roughshod over that. This is the gift of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Finally, is there intelligent life among the stars? Well, in this next interview, we explore that very topic. According to Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard University, an alien object passed through our solar system in 2017, thus proving that we are not alone in the universe. But what is this proof? Well, joining us now to discuss is Professor Avi Loeb himself, chair of the Harvard Astronomy Department and director of the university's Black Hole Initiative. Professor, I'm so excited to have you here because I'm somewhat a believer of myself. What can you tell us about Oumuamua, and is this the first real proof of alien life?
Well, Oumuamua is the first object that came close to Earth that was spotted from outside the solar system. It moved too fast to be bound to the sun. And at first, astronomers thought it must be a comet or an asteroid of the type that we find in the solar system that came from another star. But then as we collected data, it looked as if the object is very peculiar. It's most likely flat. It is much longer than it is wide, and it doesn't have any cometary tail, yet it is being pushed away from the sun by some additional force. And the question is, what's that force? And we suggested that it might be just the sunlight reflecting off its surface in the way that a sail reflects the wind. So we are currently developing this technology, light sail, by which you can push a spacecraft, a sail that is lightweight with a beam of light or with sunlight. And the idea is that perhaps this is some space junk or debris that was produced by another civilization. I wouldn't say that it's a proof. It's just that this object looks like nothing we have seen before, and it could be artificial in origin. And in order to find out whether it is, I mean, we cannot really chase it, but we can find other objects that look similar in the coming years.
So, again, to kind of follow up on my own question again, isn't it possible, or what's the probability that this is just a natural phenomenon that we have not yet encountered?
Well, it's interesting. Astronomers that are from the mainstream that try to explain it in terms of natural processes had great difficulties. They had to invoke, again, something that we have never seen before, like a hydrogen iceberg. And the problem with that is that it would evaporate very quickly. They suggested maybe it's a dust bunny of the type, a collection of dust particles that is very porous, that is pushed by sunlight. Again, that would not be a very stable configuration. So it's not as if they said, we can actually explain it in analogy to an object that we have seen. They had to come to hypothesize the existence of things we've never seen before. And my point is, if it's nothing that like we have seen before, potentially it could be a technological equipment. It's just like going to the beach. I enjoy walking on the beach and looking at seashells, but every now and then you find a plastic bottle that may indicate that it carries a message from another civilization in the case of what we find on the sky. Now, I should say it's not a speculation that there are other civilizations, because we now know that half of the sun-like stars have a planet of the size of the Earth, roughly at the same distance from the star, so that there could be liquid water on the planet,
sure.
And also the chemistry of life as we know it. So if you arrange for similar circumstances to those that we find on Earth in billions of other systems just within the Milky Way, it's very unlikely that we are alone. And moreover, to finish, it's very unlikely that we are the sharpest cookie in the jar, that we are the smartest kid on the block.
All right, well, I am so excited for the implications of this and how the rest of the scientific community is going to receive this data and kind of extrapolate from there. Until then, Avi Loeb, Professor Loeb, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, that's all for today's Good Week Israel. I hope we've helped you start your week with a smile. I'm Aaron Porras. See you next week.